Okay, good morning. I think we are up and running. I'm just going to do some checks here. Sorry for starting a little later than I said for anyone watching in, but my laptop decided to not recognize one of my monitors and also to have a complete freak out. So apologies for that. I'm just going to frantically do some checking of some stuff in the background while I'm talking to you. So welcome to Sundae Club. This is Ruby on Rails live streams for learners, and what we are going to be doing today is basically starting a new Rails app and kind of talking a little bit about what I'd like to do on Sundae Club and how this kind of thing came around. So let's start there. At the end of last year, I did some live streams for the project I was working on. And I was contracting at the time, so I was able to do that kind of on an ad hoc basis. And now I am working a normal 9 to 5. I am kind of unable to do that on an ad hoc basis, and Sunday mornings is kind of the time that I have free for that. So hopefully we can keep this regular. It'll be just like of indefinite length, but keep that schedule fairly regular. And the content that I like to kind of work on is basically I've been coaching at a few coding workshops, things to help learners kind of get started, but also kind of move forward on their journey with Rails. And there are actually some amazing tutorials and learning resources available for Rails, and it's also widely used by boot camps and things like that to get people started. But a lot of the questions that learners ask are actually kind of just the next step on from that. So maybe they've seen a tutorial and got like a case study working of something, a feature or something they'd like to implement. But actually they're like, okay, well, I've got my basic version working. How do I actually apply this to an application? And then how does this work in the real world? Because often learners are working on applications maybe with a very small number of users or not quite at that scale. And one of the things they're often looking for some kind of, not even anything specific, but just some kind of waymarks and kind of landmarks on the horizon of like, okay, well, how does this scale up, or what would this look like if I was working in a team, or what would this look like on a larger app? And hopefully I was kind of looking to cover some of that in some of these live streams. So we're going to build a real app and use that as our example case, but mainly focus on questions that I've come across from learners like that. And then if people do end up watching these streams, then we can take questions directly and kind of have people reach out and do things like that. So I'm hoping that what we can do over here, bear with me because this is the first time I've streamed since the end of last year, and we can move between things. Okay, so I think you can all hear me. Cool. So what we're going to do is build an app that is for this live stream, basically. So it's a little app that basically builds a website for the live stream, has channels and streams that people can watch. And we're going to call it Sundae Club, Sunday as in the ice cream rather than the day, and we'll build that together. So today is the first time that I have run Rails new for the first time, so we're going to deal with that. Hopefully that will go okay, because obviously when you're working, you work on kind of the same app a lot, and you don't need to keep generating new ones every day. So that's been a little while. And also there's some new stuff in Rails that I would kind of have been reading about and kind of doing some research on the side, but would love to spend some more time in, and would love to kind of look at that in more depth as well. So I think this will be a good opportunity. Streams hopefully won't just be on Sundays, but these will be the main ones. And if I get any spare time outside of that, then we'll do some extra work, kind of maybe homework club or something like that outside of Sundays. And the kind of first learner that I spoke to that I think is relevant for this is a lady that I spoke to at Code Bar London this week, and she had been on a kind of a self-taught coding journey and basically had gone from point to point, so learning different aspects, whether it's talking to a database and kind of SQL and that type of things, some different aspects of JavaScript and Node and NPM and bits and bobs like that, and then over here some Python and other bits and bobs over here, but hadn't quite come across the idea of a framework like Rails or Django or Laravel or any of those kind of frameworks yet, which is interesting that that she had put those points together on a map and knew that she needed to build her kind of the app that she was looking to build. She needed all of those individual parts, but hadn't quite come to the point of working with the framework. So what I thought it would be interesting in terms of building Rails new would be to look at how specifically for learners, a framework like Rails, and I'm basically always going to use Rails as the example, but I'm not excluding the other amazing frameworks in the world, but Rails manages to encompass a lot of what you would cover on your own in kind of smaller subsets, and you may not even realize there are things that Rails is doing that you're not actually even aware of, that you would perhaps need to go down a bit of a rabbit hole learning if you were taking a different learner's journey. So it kind of it enables you to get started very quickly and then gradually discover the individual parts that you need. And then I think that as we talk about how the things you learn then apply at larger scale or on larger code bases, I think that a lot of that experience is knowing how each individual part of that works and where you would personally like to specialize, or things that you want to go deeper on, or where you can skip over using your framework at all and do other things. Again, when you're a learner, that all sounds very abstract. You're like, okay, I don't really care, and you just push all that stuff to into the future, which is great, which Rails allows you to do. Let's go and look at some real stuff. So I'm still hoping that you guys can see and hear me and that the stream is running. I'm just going to try and refresh this here. Again, apologies. This is my first time in a little while. I'm going to look back on these early ones in a few weeks and be like, ha, what an amateur I was. I didn't know what I was doing. Again, this isn't my first stream, so I really should know how to do this by now, but just checking on a few things. I just want to make sure that, because I don't have anyone live, that I can be seen and heard and things like that. Okay. Let me just press that. Cool. Yep, that's me looking down over there. Great. And on YouTube as well. So this is live on Twitch and YouTube for anyone that wants to watch. But my iPad is definitely not liking YouTube at the moment. Cool, there I am. Great, okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump over to the coding view. So hopefully you can see my browser and some stuff. So one of the things that I picked up on last time was just how much the font sizes needed to be bumped up. So let's do that, and I think we should be inside our sites directory. All right, so let's take a look. We're not going to go, this isn't tutorials for learners. That's one of the things I do kind of want to emphasize fairly upfront. There are so many great tutorial resources for learners. So if you are interested, then things like Go Rails is a great resource. If you look at the topics and lessons that they have, big deep dives into what they do. I've only brushed the surface of these. If you're interested there's things like Ruby Tapas for just the Ruby stuff, which is kind of more for advanced users. And then obviously you have Michael Hartle's the Rails tutorial. Tutorial. And I think that's Learn Enough to Be Dangerous. So there's some great resources here. So if you are just getting started and you've come across, I'm very much going to be hand waving over these and deferring to, if you want to go and take a deep dive at anything, then these are the places to go. So we're going to kind of just kind of take for granted that there are certain things you either know or can go and research if you have the time. So Rails is, saying that, Rails, if you haven't come across it, is this idea of a framework where lots of things that you would need to build a web application or a different type of application are all encompassed in one thing. You install that one thing and then you can use the framework, use all of the individual building blocks that it provides you to create your app. And so it is literally just kind of a shell that you can put your code into. So loads of huge sites are Rails sites. One of the most famous is GitHub, which you will come across on your coding journey if you are just getting started. And GitHub is a Rails app under the hood. Okay, so let's take a look. We want to... Oh God, I can't type this morning. It's Sunday morning, so I'm supposed to better get used to that if I'm going to be doing this every week. And let's start a Git repo. I'm not going to go into the details of Git right now. Again, I'm assuming if you're a learner that you're kind of past that point in your journey. So let's see. Bump this up again. I really want to make it so that people who do catch up on this can make sure they can read the font size pretty easily. So let's take a look at should have Rails installed. So do we have the Rails gem? Cool, so on 5.16. So let's get the latest version. How do you do that? Install latest version of gem. Cool. Can I put install specific version? I'm assuming I can just pass it a version flag. Yep, cool. So we can do gem install Rails. And what was that latest version that it said? 6032. 6032. So like I said, this is the first time I've done this in a little while. So despite the fact that I am a Rails developer, hopefully if you are a learner, you'll see that it doesn't really matter how much experience you have. You don't memorize everything at all. And it's important for learners to know that half of the time you are just Googling things that your brain has forgotten how to do, or that you would guess how to do. You would guess that it was just a -v flag on there, but you just go and check it. And so there is a lot of Googling even when you are past that learner stage. I think learners sometimes think if they're having to look things up, that's a negative, or that they should be memorizing these things, and of course that's definitely not the case. So even if you're further along on your journey, don't worry too much about that. Okay, so can we do Rails new with specific? It's got that underscore thing. Rails new with specific version. Cool, this will be one of these. Yeah, so Rails, oh, it's undocumented, cool. So Rails underscore then new. Oh, do you have to do Rails new and then the... Can I just do it in the directory? Just give it dot, that should be right. Rails new in same directory. Assuming I can just give it new dot, yeah, cool. And we are 6032. Now, let's go and look. Do we want everything that Rails comes with? So for anyone who hasn't used it before, Rails comes with loads of stuff, and that's great because, like I said, it gives you loads of stuff, loads of individual building blocks that you get to use as part of the framework, so you don't need to learn them all each individually. However, what that means is you can also turn them on and off. And I know that there is also a new project. So let's start here to start with. So, is it going to give us a list of these in the docs, or do I need to go poking around elsewhere to find those? So to clarify what I'm looking for, if I type in Rails, then the version number, which you wouldn't normally need to do because you would just want the version installed. I'm just ensuring that it's that latest version I've just used. It will give me the default setup, but I'm guessing that I want things like Postgres, and I want Rails specify new database. There we go. And that's from 2013. Let's see if we've got a 2019 and more up-to-date version. So Rails Okay, so this is an example of this. So as you do Rails new my app, as it's called Sundae Club, we can give it little flags like this to tell it to do things. So I do want it to be Postgres. So I'm gonna pop that at the end here. And I also, is that the only flag here? So the other project I'd seen recently was this. And I haven't really had a chance to delve into this. So templates to enrich so Rails add features to both old and new apps. So we've got a new app. Check out our repository of templates for adding everything from authentication to error monitoring to your apps. So find and create an app template, run the template. Is that just installing gems, I guess? So hello world, using Rails templates, okay. Sorry, this might be a bit of a tangent, but it's interesting to know that projects like this exist for Rails. So again, if you're a learner, that's a big plus for having a kind of a framework that can provide you with a lot of resources right out of the box, and a lot of other developers have poured time into. So, oh, it's literally pointing to a script. What is this then? It's just like a config script. So that doesn't build Rails? I'm totally confused by that. Hang on a second. Where's the docs? Every template, so bring the view, then copy paste it. Won't change anything. Oh, I see. So you install the app already and then you run these commands over it. Okay, so let's go and take a look at another one. Oh, it's adding. Oh, okay. They're just running commands on your behalf. Okay, so we don't really need that right now. We can come back to these. Okay, so we want. Okay, well, let's just take the rest of the defaults and we'll see what we get. So we've asked it to give us Postgres as the default database, and let's run that and see what we get. Cool, then it's going to run bundle install, which will install all the Ruby gems for us. I'm hoping this goes okay and we don't end up getting stuck for ages because this is a fairly new laptop. So if we get stuck installing like a Geary or Postgres or something like that, we may lose days of our lives to that, but let's hoping everything goes fine. Okay, it's taking just a little while. Cool, I was just checking my audio was coming out on this stream, because otherwise I would have been very annoyed. Okay, that is going to take a little while. So why don't we talk a little bit about what we are going to build. So in order to run these streams, I have been using this software called Streamlabs. And they give you a little website basically for your stream for $10, $20 a month, something like that. And we're gonna build a little mini version of that. We're just gonna open source a little mini version of that, so that that gives us kind of a nice example and kind of like a real world app. And hopefully we can use it. We want to use it to host the website for this Sundae Club project, and then we'll make it so that people can host their own stuff on there if they would like to. Obviously we'll make it open source so you guys can see the code if you want to have a play around with it. So these are all our gems installing, and everything's looking fairly familiar. So one of the other things I want to mention is some of the stuff I'm interested in exploring. One of this reason this project is interesting to me. I'm interested in the action cable stuff. So I haven't really had a cause to use that on a project yet. One of the downsides of either being employed as a Rails developer or contracting is that you don't always get a chance to decide kind of on the implementation of a thing you want to do, or which gems or technologies you get to use, which is fine because it's, you know, specific to that project. But what that means is when you do see a cool project or something you want to play with go past, then you have to kind of make spare time to go and explore that. And the trouble is you don't always have a project to hand that needs it, so you kind of have to come up with something. So we're hopefully going to do that in this case. So I'm interested in the action cable stuff, and also the stimulus reflex side of things, and the stimulus.js, which I have been really kind of following and playing around with just a tiny little bit, but not enough to really do anything with. And I'm interested in that side of normally kind of like, certainly for the last few years, I've been using React or other things to kind of make things happen in the front end. And I think that I'm interested in what stimulus and stimulus reflex or action cable and things like that can provide. Okay, so the default version of Rails, the bundle for the default version of Rails is now pretty long. I didn't realize it was going to take this long. So we can take a look at some of the files that we're getting here. Okay, so this is so channels is all the new action cable stuff. I wonder if I could have told it I would. I think I'm just going to use RSpec for this project because I do really want to get more into test unit, but I don't really want to learn too many parallel tracks at the same time, just because I'll end up getting a bit too stuck too quickly. Active storage I haven't really had a chance to play with yet. Been using gems for file management on existing projects, and so just haven't had a chance to use that. I did try and use it once, but I think it was fairly young. Active storage is the gem that handles uploading files, photos, assets to third-party storage or to wherever you want to store them on behalf of your app. And I tried to use it at a fairly young stage in its life, and I don't think it played with our CDN very well. So I think I had to back out of that pretty quickly. I'm using Cloudflare or CloudFront, one of those two, and it didn't quite pan out with how we were using it. So yeah, so there's test unit stuff in there. We can just swap that out for some RSpec stuff. Fair enough. How are we getting on? Okay. So I think there is actually like Rails new minimal install. Yeah, so there's now like a -- minimal. I deliberately haven't done -- minimal. That came out, I think, as part of the that kind of May of WTFs, which was kind of new surprising things about Rails that would surprise a newbie. So I think so there was a kind of good conversation around here on the discourse around May of WTFs. Yeah, so like things that would surprise the person new to Rails, and a bunch of these then ended up kind of introducing new things, and -- minimal was one of those. But we haven't done that. We've got the whole thing. So yarn not installed. Please download and install yarn. So is yarn installed on this laptop? It's not. Okay, great. See how wildly prepared I am. So again, this is kind of useful for a learner to see. Like it's is npm installed? Yes. Okay. And I have Node as well. Okay, so we could do that. So can we just do... Can we install yarn from npm? No? We can do it from Brew, so that'll do for us. Let's see what that does. So let me just on my other screen over here. Okay, this is cool. So if I creator sites, I guess. Yeah, so we'll build like a little simple version of these little websites where it's basically like a page per stream kind of thing, or a page per video. I've made a few notes for that, but I knew we wouldn't get into that stuff today. So, but that's roughly what we'll try and emulate. So we got Yarn. So if you're interested in why I'm installing Yarn, this actually came up as part of that learner's conversation around the relationship between all of the individual things they had been learning. So, for example, when learning Python, they've then been kind of had a conversation with someone, oh, you should learn JavaScript over here, and you know, MySQL, Postgres, things like that, and jumping around. Yarn, NPM, and Node are in the JavaScript ecosystem, and as modern web development has moved forward, a lot of the frameworks have had to adopt more and more of the JavaScript ecosystem into them. So that's why Rails tells you about things like Yarn in its kind of initial loading state, and so Rails now has to some extent, kind of I don't know how to describe it, kind of work more ingrained with. I don't know, like Webpack, things like that. JavaScript has just become a more predominant part of modern web development to the point where Rails API mode will give you an API on the assumption that a lot of people may use that for a JavaScript front end that uses React or another purely JavaScript framework, but wants to speak to a Ruby on Rails back end. So again, if you're really early in that learner journey, you might not know what any of that means, but that's why I just want to have Yarn ready to go here as well, because I want to use it with for JavaScript alongside my Rails code. So let's take a look at what we have got. So we've got loads of cool new stuff. And so what we should be able to do, can we open code from here? Yes, cool. Cool, so this is VS Code, which is a little code editor, and we can now see all of the stuff we have got from running Rails new. And we've got loads of files and folders to play with, so if I just stretch that out, we'll be able to see that. Cool. So these are the folders it's created by default. Just taking a look around myself. I haven't done this in a little while. I've kind of just done Rails new to check for something or fire something up quickly. So it's not something I've really done in anger, as they would say. So okay, not a huge amount. I kind of read some of that WTF stuff as if there was more stuff. I guess getting the action cable stuff, if you know you're not going to use it, is a hassle. I'm assuming. Okay, so did we get Webpacker in here as well? Yeah. Okay, so if you're not using, okay, so it does. These are things that Rails has provided you, whether you ask for them or not. And so if obviously if you don't want them, then it is a bit of a hassle, I guess. But I think we just want to use, for this project, we're just going to use most of the default stuff anyway. I can actually probably bump the Rails Ruby version up at some point. That's just why I happen to have it on an RVM, I would imagine. And we'll take a look at the action cable stuff. Okay, cool. So can we start this? Will it know to do? Presumably not. We have to give it something. I think when it did SQLite, it would just start with no information in it though. What happens if we do this? Let's just see what error we get. Oops. Oh, okay, cool. So that's another thing that I don't think I would have considered when I was a learner, that many developers just work error to error. Just like, I don't know, let's see what it'll do. Okay, so this is using Spring, so I haven't used Spring in a really long time. And then it wants to do, please run Rails Webpacker install. So that's actually why a lot of developers go error to error as frameworks get older and better. They just tell you what to do more and more. So it's like, hey, please just run this command. You're like, okay, cool. Okay, so we do, yeah, let's run Webpacker. Let's try and be as Oops. Let's try and be as vanilla Rails as we can on this project. That'll help us not go too far off the beaten path. Cool. So Webpacker, you mentioned Yarn earlier. Webpacker is a gem that, as I understand it, helps Rails work more with Webpack, which is a JavaScript. I don't know what you describe it. Build. It runs. It builds your JavaScript. I actually don't know, what does Webpack describe itself as. That was the worst description ever. Let's go to the website. Module bundler. Okay, I actually did a talk recently about JavaScript modules, so I should probably know what it calls itself. Okay, cool. So module bundler, and so basically, Webpacker is Rails' way of being able to speak to Webpack in Rails. You actually don't have to use it. You can run Rails alongside Webpack if you're interested. So let's just go back and try this. I'm interested to see what came out of that month of WTS, or May of WTFs, or whatever it was, to see how quickly you can actually get a server running. So does this now work? Cool. Okay, so we just need a database. So if we do oh god, db create, will that do all of them? I haven't put anything in the config for databases. I'm just poking around, seeing what Rails will give us straight out of the box. Cool, okay, so it will create one development and one test environment in Postgres, I'm hoping. And then, oh, we can just do... oh, cool, okay. Well, I don't know how hard that got, but from the May of WTF stuff, like, that's pretty straightforward to get from no code to, yeah, you're on Rails. There was just a lot of sitting and waiting for my CPU to do stuff, but other than that, that was pretty painless. So we now have a blank Rails app. So this is our new app. You get this holding screen thingy to tell you some information, and that's it. You're then ready to go and code and do your thing. Wow, yeah, impressive. Okay, kind of thought we were going to spend more time just getting stuck in Rails installations. Okay, cool. So we're not going to do that. Cool. Okay, so that's using Puma. Great. Okay, so shall we... Oh, one of the things I'm interested in is now I haven't yet used the kind of encrypted credential-y stuff. Is that now all in Rails default as well, so that in here and in here? So the credentials are things that you might need to store in your app, like API keys for third-party services, various other types of things. And in Rails 5 something, I think, they moved to having this encrypted credentials so that you don't need to, as I understand it, I think it was so that each individual developer then doesn't need to go and get keys from somewhere. They can simply you can check in what's in the repository to GitHub or something like that, and it will be available to them when they get to the other end. I'm not 100% sure how that works. Let's go take a look at that, because I'm interested because the next step I was going to do was git commit, and I want to know what's happening there. So let's say it's Rails. Yeah, let's just look for that encrypted. Okay, so 5.2. To use encrypted credentials, need a key. Without this encryption key, you won't be able to decrypt your credentials. It's safe to commit the encrypted. I'm going to bump this font size up for you guys. Disclosing how many normal secrets. Rails 5.2 replaces both secrets with you cannot use plain text credentials. There's only credentials. Okay, I'm just skim reading this. You need a key. That's encryption key. Config.master.key is created. Okay, config.master.key. Okay, cool. So my key there. It's also added to git ignore, so it doesn't get committed in your repo. Okay. So that's presumably the bit that I shouldn't show on the thing, although it's my development environment, so I don't... Oh, no. Does that matter? No, I guess that's app specific. But then, not sure I really care, because this is just a dummy app. The encrypted credentials are saved on config credentials. Don't edit the file directly. To add credentials, run bin rails credentials. Edit. Your text editor will open an unencrypted version of your credentials. Oh, I'm so behind on this. I so haven't used this. Okay, this sounds great. Your text editor will open an unencrypted version of your credentials. So that would be like I said, third-party API keys or super secret, mega secret stuff that you need to keep in your app. If you don't have an editor set, you can run blah, blah, blah. Okay, don't care about that. After saving the file, the encrypted version will be saved to blah, blah, blah. Okay, so those are other credentials. They are just encrypted. If you want to use the credentials in the production environment, add the following master key. You can access the credentials with the Rails application credentials. For example, if you have foo bar or return bar, cool. You can use any valid YAML on your credentials. Rails suggests using a flat format when you don't have to put development or production anymore. Oh, okay. Right. Wait, what? So in the past, when using credentials, you might separate them out into different environments. So your development environment would have your test API keys, and your production environment would have your real ones. So if you were using something like Stripe, you'd have two different API keys. You can use different areas. There's nothing stopping you from using production though. You can access, okay. So when that's flat, is it? Okay, then, oh, okay, so you don't need to use production, you simply set them differently? Does that cover envars as well? No, because they were never set as secrets. Can you then, but I would set secrets as envars for Heroku stuff. So can you still do that? In your repo, you have a change in. Base, okay. Okay, I'm gonna go and research that a little bit outside of this stream. I will post a link to that in the chat if you are interested. I posted it on the YouTube chat. I'm aware that this is on Twitch as well, so I think that might then appear on the screen. Yep, cool. So if you're watching this on Twitch, you might need to jump over to the YouTube link to find that link. But if you just Google around, I'm sure you'll find it, or it's right there on the screen. Cool. Okay, so what it basically means is we don't need to worry about that. So it says it's in git ignore. So what else is in here? This is everything we want git not to grab. So there's the config master.key. So that's taking care of everything there. Cool. So let's move this to the right. Screen over here. I'm hoping this is still large enough for you guys to read. We don't really want to exclude everything. We're just kind of assuming that node modules is done in here, presumably. Yep. So we really hope that Rails has taken care of everything for us by default. So we can do... Just going to chuck the whole lot in for now. Yeah. That's a huge volume of stuff. This really is a new laptop. Okay. Okay, let me just go and grab a tab for this. So bear with me just a second. Have I not set even... I must have set GitHub up on this, but it must have used that specific repo's setting. Bear with me. Just doing this in the other window in case there's anything super secret, mega, and private that comes up. Nope, cool, okay. So you might, if you're new to Git, you might see Git commits and Git in general looking different all the time. Actually, I don't know why that's a bad habit. So add installation. So you might use Git editor, Git tower, source tree, the GitHub app, something like that, and they would actually provide an interface. You might solely do it in the terminal, which would have opened Vim or something like that for you to type your commit into. But you can also configure it so that this on the right hand side is terminal, which is the same as running the terminal app on your Mac or something like that, just the command line. And then when I have it configured so that when I press when I type git commit, it opens my editor, just so that I can type it in here, and then when I save and close the file, it will jump back to the terminal, just because it gives me me personally a nicer editor experience. You'll see developers doing this a million different ways, so don't be kind of concerned or worried if you notice it looking different. There's normally a little line. Oh, it's just because it's so far over. So no. For this repo, we ran Rails new. Oops. Database Postgres thing here. Sorry, I'm just on the other screen for a second, just grabbing up the thing. Flag. And this commit contains the was reduced. Haven't yet any configuration changes. I think that's all we really need in there. Just the initial commit. App is did boot locally at this stage. Cool. And close that up. Right, let me just go again. I'm going to jump over onto the other screen for a second because I need to have a repo to push this into, so bear with me just a second. Cool. So I'll skip that step. Sorry, GitHub is making me answer 20 different questions. It's obviously part of their cool. No, great. Okay, so create a new repository. Public. I'm just doing it on the other screen just in case there's anything that is in my GitHub account that it just shows on the screen for a second, so just bear with me. Make the repo and then I can pull this over. Cool, okay, so I can then pull this tab over to here. So we can do git remote, and I think I've used GitHub on this computer before, so I think we'll be okay with that. So this is basically what we were doing before. We did git init before we started. We added all the code that we've got. We did git add dot committed. That's what I've just typed out the message for. Do we have to branch into master? Aren't we already on master by default? Yep, unmasked already. Get remote add origin. Cool, we should be able to do that. And it's bound to tell me no. I think I have. Cool, okay, great. So then if we refresh this, cool, we now have our default Rails installations. We've got a default README, and this is public, so you can go take a look at this. Oh, I should have put that in a lowercase as well, that's annoying. Okay, so this is what a new Rails build is made up of: 76% Ruby, 13.4 HTML, 8.9% JavaScript, and a little dash of CSS. Okay, cool. So that is us up and running with our Rails new. So shall we see if we can get it to do something? So we're running a local server somewhere. Let me just spin one up. Oh, we can. No, let's do it in terminal over here. So this one, terminal. So if we do. So if you're running Webpacker, do you have to run Webpack separately, or does this now take care of it? I haven't really used Webpacker. So it boots Puma, which is our Rails server. It doesn't mention doing any JS stuff. So let's see what happens. Okay, so let's go and see where everything is. We want to go and take a look at, so our routes file will be telling us that we have. Oh, okay, so it doesn't actually give you, does it give you that default thing? No, that's just if there is no route. Okay. So we can start to do things like change the name of it. So if we then open up our local server again, actually, so I don't do that swiping thing because people don't like it on there. Hopefully if I can then just jump back and forth. So have we now got our app here? Oh, okay, so that's not actually calling us. So that is, so we don't have any routes. That means we obviously just get this default page. So none of our stuff is used. Okay, cool. So we obviously have to tell it what we want to do. And we just get application controller. Let's give it a static. This is kind of a good example of a question for learners, which is like, how do you have landing pages and things like that within your Rails app? Do you see people using like Jekyll or WordPress or something like that as like the landing page for the site, and then you kind of transfer into the Rails app? Don't really want to go down anything too complicated. So I think what we might do is just set up something like a static controller and just have some pages on there that can kind of be it could be like a landing pages controller or something like that, that would give us some places for users to go. Yeah, the landing pages. Let's call it landing pages for now. We don't have any data to show on them at the moment, so they don't need any models or anything to be in our system, which there aren't anyway. Cool. Yeah, let's just see if we can get something to show on the screen. That's all we're really aiming for. It's not a very huge aim. Let's see if we can do it, because it feels nice to write some code in the stream for a change. Okay. And not having one of written these from scratch for a little while, I'm bound to miss something. But that'll do. That should get us something, and then we can go and say, oh, let's see if we can do this from memory. Is it just root? Just have to do 2 and stuff like that. Oh, might have to Google that. Rails root. Using root 2. Oh, so close. Oh, you don't need the 2, but it does just need to be a string, of course. Okay, cool. Cool, and that is... Oh, okay. So, am I getting Rubocop because that's installed by default, or am I getting Rubocop because I've got Rubocop installed? Rubocop, if you haven't heard of that, is the gem for... it's giving these little squiggly lines. It does a like style check, so it's not in here, so that must just be on my system. Okay, so you don't get those by default, so you might just want to run... there's like a gem somewhere that will shove that at the top of your files. So we don't really care about that right now. And let's do that and see if that works on our new app. So Rails info roots. There's not right. It's literally Rails info roots. There we go. And landing page, home page. Cool. So then if we go to make a little view. Cool. And then we want that to be called landing pages. Nope, not another file. We want it to be a folder. Call it homepage. I'm just going to use ERB. I like ERB. And we're going to just put in a heading. It's going to be called Sundae Club because of branding. And will that then work? Oh, okay, that's really thinking about it. Yep, okay, great. So we are up and running. We have loads of Rubocop errors, but we don't really care about those. We have something rendering, and we have a root directory, and we have something to show for our efforts. Cool. Okay, so I'm not really going to commit that because that's just checking that everything worked. So I think what we might want to do is kind of plan out what we want to build really. So let's take a look at kind of the thing we're emulating. So you can have the easiest website builder for content creators. We don't really care about any of that stuff. Just want a really basic version of it. Can I see one? Oh, can I see the one for the one? Because I am signed in. So can I see my one? Hang on a second. I'm just going to go and put that in on the other screen real quick. Just in case. Ooh, yeah, okay, that was the right tab. Just in case it shows something like my credit card or something, or something wild like that. Oh, okay, so it wants to offer me a domain name, which I don't really want to. Okay, I want to skip onboarding. They're asking. Sorry about this. They're asking about a million questions. I'm not interested right now, but we'll learn more later on. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. So website. Sorry about this. I'm hopefully going to be able to pull this back onto. Oh, okay, cool. So you basically get a little editor as part of your Streamlabs account. You get themes, design, and content. That's all we really care about. We're just going to spit it out. And do you get multiple pages? Or is the idea you just get a page that shows everything? Okay, there's a bunch of stuff here that I don't really know anything about, but we don't really care about that. We just want to have a page where you can do multiple streams and then each one gets saved. This only really works for YouTube streaming because I think that the whole idea of Twitch streaming is that they disappear. So obviously that's a bit less relevant. Whereas I'm thinking more for this channel that YouTube is more predominant, so that people can come across them on the Sundae Club site as well as YouTube or anything like that. So we can just kind of build that out. But I think on Twitch people can save them to YouTube afterwards and stuff. So maybe it could still be useful. Okay, so we want. Oh, you really okay? So what do we get in navigation if you don't get? What's on the menu? Can I have more pages? Site design, site content. Here we go. Manage my site pages. Add page. Test page. Okay, so this is the more kind of thing I'm looking to do. So we get kind of a standard one-to-many relationship. So a little site can have many pages, bits and bobs like that. I wonder why it has V2 in it. Test page. Cool. And then if we go back, presumably we can then add content to the test page and we can drag stuff over. Okay, this makes more sense. Then we can just build little pages. So that's a lot more the kind of thing that I was looking to do. So can we actually get to this? What did it say that URL was? Immediately. Good old delete everything button. Okay, so let's go to what was it? Content. Manage my site pages. Does this work? Okay, cool. What did it go straight to tip? That's weird. So what did V2 add? Okay, that now goes to this page. Okay. Which is cool. Does that show the actual stream? No, video unavailable. Okay, not sure why that is because the stream is running right now. So that's not amazing. But maybe we have to tell it the right thing. Is this video on YouTube? Is that the right one? Cool, there's me. That's me. Okay, cool. So this is what we're going to be building, and we can kind of flesh that out. Okay. So I think what we're going to roughly end up with, if we just jot down some notes, and we'll kind of crack into these next week, I think. Probably something okay, so let's make this a bit bigger. So we'll probably have multiple channels. Each one, let's say we're going to have users. Because we can start to build these relationships out next week. This will give us a heads up as to what we want to do. We want to have users that can log in. Each user, let's say we're going to have organizations as well, because one of the things I'd like to show and demonstrate in terms of the being useful to learners is one of the things you get experience of as you build more and more apps is that you keep bumping into the same pitfalls, which is that balance between building things that you're not going to need and overly complicating things, overly optimizing things to begin with, versus things where you know where you're going to come unstuck. So you need to get things up quickly. So an example for that is what models to build. So you might say, okay, well, all we know so far is we're going to have streams or maybe videos. It's probably a good way to do it. And then users, and a user can kind of have many videos. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, actually we want to show them in a channel. So a user can have many channels, and a channel can have many videos. And then as soon as you want 3 users to manage 2 channels, and then one of those users can only have certain restrictions on other ones, you start to bump into needing to insert things in here, and that's all fine. That's all totally kind of like you want to build the right thing at the right time, and that there's basically a lot of experience that goes into that in terms of like how far are we going to go, the decisions that you make up front, you could build that out step by step. When do we need it by? What kind of time do we have? How far out are we scoping? All of these kind of questions that get asked. So I'm actually not going to optimize for let's get it out the door. I'm actually going to optimize a little bit for let's overly complicate things to make it a bit more interesting for people learning and to have some more case studies. So we're going to have users and organizations. So then the organization, that will probably be something, well, let's make that like, if you're a user, you'll be bumping into associations really early on in Rails. So you would have something where a user has and belongs to many organizations. So kind of like the YouTube model, I guess, so one user can be on multiple channels. And then an organization can then have many channels. The channels can then have... Yeah, so I'm immediately casting ahead to users can then have many, I guess they're videos, but it'd be interesting to have like posts and stuff. So we could maybe have something more like, that'd be something like videos, updates, etc. So maybe a channel has many channel events, because it might not just be videos that you put in there. So that's almost like a blog and blog posts. Might be a more interesting way to do it for people that are looking for slightly, because that could then be something like polymorphic or something like that. We could kind of do that just to have those examples for learners to take a look at. And then we'd probably want stuff like chat and comments is always a good one for video. What did that other thing have on it? Immediately lost it on this one. Contact form, yeah, that one's probably pretty straightforward to us. So a feed of some sort, all your Twitch clips, YouTube clips. Yeah, that one sounds pretty interesting to build. Feed. Sure, this is kind of like building out on the site. So yeah, we could then say that maybe the site itself is an object and that site has many pages. And then, sorry, I'm swapping these over. It's just because I'm tapping the keyboard. So the site has many pages, perhaps. This is just, again, hopefully useful for learners just to see the mental process of just like mapping out some greenfield code, just really, really super early stages. Just making kind of a few notes on things that you might want to do. So pages would then have like content items or something like that, and they would be of different types. So that could then be like text, image, and all the stuff that they have on there. And the channels could have their own pages or something like that. I have no idea if any of that is relevant. I'm just super early. I'll try and spend some time this week looking at it. Social media stuff. And then what I think we could look at is things like API integration. So then that would obviously be for Twitch and YouTube would be the natural contenders, I think, there, because they're kind of leading stream things. Facebook maybe something like that, where maybe we could automatically create channel events when things happen on these APIs. So kind of explore that a little bit. But mainly what I'll try and do this week is cast around and take a look at some learner questions that I think are relevant to kind of building early stage Rails app and get those answered. So I'm going to wrap up there just because I don't want to start delving into any of these two things, because any of these things too far, just because I think we will want to kind of crack through them and write some real code. So that's the end of this first stream. Thank you very much if you have watched any of it. And if I don't get a chance to do any kind of homework club, then I will see you next Sunday for Sundae Club. Have a great day.